I'd like to say first time Pride Clubs do make her feel nice. Well, Miss Jennie Whitwood, so please do make her feel nice. Well, 1, 2, 3, start.
Alright everyone, hello. My name's Jennie, as was reliably informed there, and I am a geneticist. Hey. Woo! Yeah, no, it's not normally the reaction I get. I know what people say behind my back. I know what they think. They think that I spend most of my time creating killer GM crops, cloning armies, and splicing all kinds of weird bits of human bodies in places they really don't belong. And to be honest, the main perpetrator for this vicious rumours, the cause of my bad reputation, is usually the newspapers. And in particular, the Daily Mail. It seems, yes, boo indeed. It seems they're forever perpetuating headlines like this. Because of course, genetic researchers don't have anything better to do. We don't fight cancer, we don't do any of that stuff. All we want to do is create an army of mutant, giant, claw-wielding ants.
Hey!
Yeah, that's what we do. And yeah, it's not so good. That's definitely what I didn't do in the lab anyway. And to be honest, when I was a kid, I wasn't really any better. Most of my decision to become a geneticist was was caused by a little movie called Jurassic Park. Maybe some people have heard of it. And this was all down to the fact that I wanted a dinosaur. And not a T-Rex, not a Triceratops. Shunning those popular choices, the one that I wanted was a Dilophosaurus. Now, if you remember the film, that is one of these guys. So these ones have these, apparently, according to the film, I believe it's actually not technically correct, but artistic license. It's one of these ones with these big, frilly collars, and they spout poison at the bad guys. Now, I'm not really sure what that says about me as a person, but I do like a ruffly collar on my blouse every now and again, so maybe that's it. And unfortunately, as time went on, the more and more I learned about genetics, the more I realised that the dino dream was probably never going to come true. It was very unlikely that I was going to be the first person with a Resurrector dinosaur kit. But, luckily, thank goodness, I actually really enjoyed the topic. It seemed that I really liked learning about genes. I like wearing jeans, as you can probably tell. That joke had to be done really, didn't it? And now that's out of the way. And I like DNA, I like chromosomes, I like all of that stuff. But the thing that really excited me, the thing that really got me going, was mating. And a bit of the dynamics of sexual reproduction in yeast. And yeast is a bit weird. I'm fairly convinced that most people that actually work on yeast only get involved because there's this strange prospect of free beer. But this is brewer's yeast. And again, shunning popular choice, I decided to go and work on the other yeast, which is called fission yeast. And fission yeast is a bit weird. It's a bit like brewer's yeast, but I've been also told that it makes really, really terrible beer. I don't know, I don't like beer, so I don't care. So I was doing it all for the love of science. And these yeast, they have a gender, which is something a bit odd. And it's not necessarily that they have kind of male or female parts, obviously for sexual objectification, as we learned earlier, but they secrete pheromones, chemical signals that attract a mate of the opposite type. And in fission yeast, these different mating types are called Mike, if you get me the joke, and Phyllis, as they're affectionately known. I say affectionately known, I mean affectionately known by just me. But those aren't real yeast, except for the little googly eyes, but anyway. They are actually called M and P, but I find that giving them an actual name, it kind of makes their little lives on the petri dish a bit more meaningful. Anyway, so there is another mating type, and this one is so weird that it's pretty much completely ignored by all researchers. And this one actually switches mating type. So can you imagine, you start your day, you're Mike, fairly comfortable, driving your car, getting dressed, going to work, doing your thing, and suddenly your body thinks, actually, I don't want to be Mike anymore, don't like being Mike, I want to be Phyllis. And then it changes. And suddenly you're Phyllis, and you've not had any say in the matter. It's probably going to be a bit of a confusing time. If anything, you're going to need a whole new wardrobe. And it gets worse, because they don't just stay as Phyllis. They then change back. So that's going to be a lot of wardrobe changes. And this yeast, it changes mating type every couple of cell divisions, and that's about every 4 hours. Again, a lot of clothes. And to be honest, we think that it's some kind of evolutionary mechanism, but we don't really know why it does it, and it just sounds like a complete mindfuck to me. So I figure no wonder it makes such a bad beer. Right. Now, the worst part of the whole thing is that to start the process, the yeast must actually break its own DNA. And you hear these things like DNA damage and all this kind of stuff floating around all the time, and they trigger all kinds of alarm bells because you think that probably leads to bad stuff. So part of my work when I was a PhD student working in the lab was to work out what exactly was going on, what's happening, how is this regulated? And I did this by looking at the structural maintenance of chromosomes protein group. And they're so called because they structurally maintain chromosomes. Yeah, scientists are good with names. And they're called SMCs for short, and there's 3 different types of groups of these proteins. So I've got some pictures. So the first one here, this one is called cohesin. And cohesin coheses chromosomes together. Again, good with names. And you'll see that it has this lovely ring structure. So that ring kind of binds around DNA and helps to hold it together. The second one also has the same lovely ring structure. And it also binds around DNA, but this time it's called condensin. And it condenses DNA, so it makes it a bit smaller. The third one, so this is one that I looked at in the lab, is SMC56. So clearly we have no idea what it did. And you might also notice it also has this lovely ring structure, and it also binds around DNA. So can you imagine? I was sitting there thinking, right, so if this is actually really important in making this repairing this DNA break, and it's crucial and important, and I'm going to get a paper on this, I'm going to get it published, it's going to be amazing, and I'm going to call it, if you liked it, I just blew my joke. If you broke it, then you should have put a ring on it. Yeah, that would have been so much better if I done it right. You know, I was so worried that I was going to say that for so much, clearly it was just fixated in my head. Anyway, it turns out that if you remove this SMC56 protein, that the yeast can no longer switch. So they get stuck. And they get stuck to live out pretty much the rest of their days as whatever mating type they started at. So if they were Mike, they get stuck as Mike. Phyllis, they get stuck as Phyllis. And yeah, it's a little bit weird. Now, if you're used to switching, probably getting stuck one way is probably pretty confusing again. And I imagine that they probably then live out the rest of their days wondering what the hell is going on. The thing is that the rest of the days for the yeast probably aren't very long, because by this point the experiment's pretty much over and they get sent to the incinerator. Yeah. So in addition to gender confusing, billions, trillions, countless yeast, also murdered an awful lot of them too. So perhaps this goes to some way to explaining why geneticists have such a bad name. We're all murderers, apparently. Anyway, one of the plus sides of working in a lab on genetic research is that you get to play with so many nasty things. For example, chemical mutagens, DNA damaging agents, things that alter DNA, or even if you're really lucky like me, you might get to play with a bit of radiation. And I'm pretty sure, yeah, ooh, indeed, you can tell from that you will have a fairly good idea of what kind of horrible things they can cause. That's right, superpowers. So as a pretty lifelong comic fan, this idea of superpowers, it was all very interesting and how it linked to genetics. But it turns out that in this weird world of comic book nerdery, mating type switching also exists. It's called Rule 63. And according to the internet, that means that for every popular male character, there's also somewhere out there a female equivalent. And vice versa. So I've just got a couple of examples. One here, the lovely Superman lady. Or this one. I love this one. Nice pink lantern there. And then this one. This one's my favourite because someone else actually got a science joke in there. Yes, made my job easier. But anyway, it's all a bit weird. And just as a kind of final thought, we geneticists and comic book nerds, we're not just all obsessed with gender and everything, but what you may be wondering, just finally, is did I actually get any superpowers while I was working in the lab? And I wasn't bitten by a radioactive spider. I didn't get to inject myself with any super serum or anything like that. Thank God my parents are actually still alive, so that's all right. But turns out there is a little something. Something that I was born with. You could say destined to have. And that is, I'm a mutant. Just like the X-Men. And I have a mutation in my HLA locus, which is the major histocompatibility group, which is pretty much part of what controls your immune system. So I have an overactive immune system. Now you think, this has got to be useful, right? Not so much. Kind of means that every now and again my body attacks itself, which is, about as fun as it sounds. But it's fine, I'm all right, it's okay. And I'm a mutant. I have a healing factor, that's what I like to call it. It does probably mean that I'm not really going to get to save the world, using that one very often, but pretty much like my dream of having a pet dinosaur, I live in hope.